Hello everyone, I'm Andy Oakley, the leader of the One New Zealand Party. Today I want to talk about the extraordinary times that we're living in, and later some ideas that the One New Zealand Party has to improve our lives, to formulate the New Zealand dream, if you like. But first and most obvious thing to talk about is that the government has taken the frightening step of issuing a state of emergency and placing the whole country in lockdown. Well, that's unless the government deem that your work is essential. Then they've given permission for you and your employer to carry on. The rest of us have been instructed by the government to stay at home, and they have issued continuous warnings in a threatening manner that we must follow these instructions. The government have also warned us not to mix with our friends or family who don't live in the same house, and there is also to be no unauthorised travel. And they mean it. A friend drove her elderly housebound mother, who's in the same bubble, about 2 kilometres, to sit in the car by the beach and have a sandwich and a cup of tea on a lovely summer's day. Under the instructions of the government, the police told them that they must go home. Children are not allowed to play with their friends. And this authoritarian governing is an assault on our freedom, and it's plainly cruel. Our hair gets long and untidy because the government have closed hairdressers and barbers. We can't buy clothes as clothing businesses are not allowed to open. In fact, practically every small business in New Zealand has been forced to close. We are now in unprecedented times, and our economy is at risk of a total collapse. Now, just for a moment, if we ignore the reasons why they've done all this and we ask ourselves, what sort of government would treat its citizens in this cruel and oppressive way? Well, it just so happens that the word tyranny means a state under cruel and oppressive government. And so the answer is that a tyrannical government treats its citizens in this cruel and oppressive way. Now, if you were to ask any tyrannical leader, why are they treating their citizens so poorly? Well, I'm sure they'll give you plenty of reasons, and some of them might even be plausible. However, surely in New Zealand, this could not happen without loud and consistent opposition to it by the opposing political parties. Yet the silence from other political parties has been deafening. This is timely as there's an election looming, and so you need to think very carefully what you will get if you vote Labour, National or New Zealand First. These are parties willing to act as a tyranny and parties willing to let others do it. Now, to the reason for all this oppression and cruelty. And you might be thinking I'm going to say Covid-19, right? Wrong, it couldn't be. And the reason it couldn't be is that we have a population of 5 million people. And to date, only 4 people have died having tested positive to the virus. They didn't die of the virus. They had other underlying health issues, including advanced old age. In New Zealand, the regular flu kills up to 500 people every year, and the flu season is about 3 months long. So even if all 500 didn't die in a 3-month period, let's imagine that 400 did. So if we compare the actual data based on today's statistics in New Zealand for a 3-month period, we have a death rate of 4 per 5 million people that have been linked to COVID-19, and a death rate of 400 per 5 million people for the regular flu. And we have a vaccination for the flu that many medical people say lowers the numbers. And the flu comes around every year and has done for the last 2,400 years. So the problem couldn't be COVID-19. The problem is alarmism, the very same alarmism that fuels climate change hysteria. Before all this was forced on us, in fact for at least 6 years, I've been pointing out that successive governments have been moving steadily in the wrong direction. And to date, I have not seen any opposition political party that is not, in its structure or its messaging, any different to the Labour and National Party. Now, this is a very big concern and precisely why the One New Zealand Party was formed. We have had a succession of political leaders and parties who do not look or act like the political leaders of the past. And I'm talking about the political leaders that built this nation. Increasingly they are younger and less experienced than the leaders of the past. They are not nation builders. By their very results, they are nation destroyers. Another major issue we have is that identity politics is changing the genders and the ethnicities of politicians. So we're moving away from a competency-based selection process to a system which selects politicians based on fair representation of identity groups. If this sort of political representation was giving us good results, well then we should support it. But look what it's dished up. Jacinda Ardern was the youngest political leader in the world. While a skilled communicator, she had done little other than go to university and work in political offices. And today, and I mean today, she is leading a tyrannical government that has locked us in our homes with little or no freedom, an economy in tatters and no logical reason for it. By logical, I'm talking about an action based on a thoroughly thought out analysis of the data, which even today is not possible because they don't have the data. And before you say that her logic is sometimes we must be cruel to be kind, well, she can't use that argument because she didn't lock us up last year when 400 people died of the flu. She also wouldn't approve a pay rise for nurses a little while back, citing that they had no money. Yet today, the government is paying 80% of the entire population to stay at home. Choosing political representation based on identity politics also undermines the very structure of our society. We get very weak leaders who quickly cave to the demands of these identity groups. Racist legislation, the Waitangi Tribunal in Māori, as an example. Young people are taught to see the world differently, as it appears that the only way forward in life is to adopt an identity which has been oppressed and then fight for equal outcomes. These are the placard-waving people wanting to ban free speech and alter the structure of the world, but can't make their beds or shower correctly in the morning. Caving into an identity group has the opposite effect to what you might think, and the clear evidence can be seen with the destruction of the Māori family unit over a period of 45 years. And this is also true in other countries, and any society that structures itself this way will head towards tyranny and collapse. So it's not surprising that, as I speak, many countries in the Western world today are in a similar situation to New Zealand. So during this pending emergency, you would have expected our leader to be calming and a strong light. She could have pointed out the death rate seems to be much lower than other viruses. Instead, she thought a better way was to parrot death and destruction by repeating the phrase, that is less dire than 80,000 deaths if COVID-19 were left unchecked. Now, saying that kind of thing to an already alarmed population is nothing short of cruel and was possibly designed to take the spotlight off her. I know many elderly people and children who've been left shocked by this outrageous statement, and there is just no consoling them. These kind of statements from our leaders make people weak. The education system that we have at present is encouraging identity politics, which forces our young people today to take on the burden of either being oppressed or an oppressor. So this weakens the fabric of our society and ultimately leads to tribalism and eventually war. And don't think I'm exaggerating. The tribal wars that lasted the entire first half of the 19th century in New Zealand, where a third of the population were killed and many were eaten, were caused by exactly the same thing as we see returning to New Zealand now. Tyrannical leaders who encourage identity politics and tribalism. Now, this is very serious. We are on a precipice, and so as a country, we simply must look at doing something very different in the near future to what we've been doing in the last 50 years. The One New Zealand Party policies were designed some time ago to combat exactly the situation that we find ourselves in now, an economic and social crisis. We've divided our policies into 3 sections that will reset our nation with a new template. Firstly, there is a policy set under the banner stability. This is designed to stabilise the people, encouraging a view that while each of us is an individual, we share a want for fairness and equal opportunities. That will be achieved by moving to a single standard of citizenship, repealing the Treaty of Waitangi Act, closing the Waitangi Tribunal, and we will also remove all race-based policies, acts or omissions in local and central government. Now, the next set of policies are based on our prosperity and to deal with an economic system that is flawed. The double entry accounting spreadsheet that the government currently run, where they imagine that they get their money from taxing people and businesses, has proven to be unstable and also cruel. We know this to be true because for many years the government were quite happy to underfund healthcare, the healthcare system, allowing probably hundreds or thousands of people over time to die. And then suddenly, when they get spooked by a virus, they can issue all the money they want. They can pay 80% of New Zealanders to stay at home and do nothing. For years, they allowed people and private businesses to rack up huge amounts of debts solely because they were afraid of spending into the economy. Look at them now. They have been running a flawed and austere limited money supply system, ignoring the advice of many prominent and international economists. Well, the One New Zealand Party have listened to those economists, and we've been advocating the very same capacity-based money supply system that they advise, whereby the government issues new sovereign New Zealand dollar into the economy as it is required, with the goal being to achieve full employment. Which brings me to perhaps the most important conclusion, and that is our vision, the New Zealand dream. But firstly, what's the vision and dream of the other major parties? Despite what Labour say their values are, i.e. to elect competent men and women to Parliament and to build and sustain an economy, well, they've proven that they can do neither of those things. And instead, they are hell-bent on appearing to be kind as the ship sinks. In terms of the National Party, as they have allowed New Zealand to sink into tyranny without so much as a whimper, that makes their vision irrelevant. As New Zealand First cannot be trusted, their vision of putting New Zealanders first is also irrelevant. That we can accept that unlike the major parties, the One New Zealand Party has no track record. But as I stated at the beginning, we simply must do something different. And we do have a set of very different policies to all the other parties, which are designed specifically to place a template over New Zealand, which will move us from tyranny to a stable and prosperous future. A future with full employment and increased productivity. So please visit our website at onenewzealandparty.org.nz to see our full set of policies and to join. We need you to help make a difference.